October of 2018, Indonesia Lion Air Flight 610 crashes 13 minutes after takeoff in the Java Sea, losing life. 189 people. Just 5 months later, in March of 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 suffers the same fate 6 minutes after takeoff, with another 159 people perishing. The common factor that sets off all the alarms is that, in both cases, it is the newest model of the Boeing company, the 737 MAX. The subsequent investigation revealed that a failure in the angle of attack sensor provided erroneous data to the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system flight control system, which caused the plane to tilt downwards uncontrollably. The pilot struggled to regain control of the plane, but ultimately it was too late. How could this have happened on one of the most advanced planes in the world? This is what we will see in a new black box video from Aviation World. October 29, 2018. A Lion airplane flying from Jakarta to Pangkal Pinang took off at 6:20 a.m. It heads west and shortly after reorients itself northeast, which it maintained until it crashed into the Java Sea approximately at 6:33 a.m. The aircraft reached a maximum altitude of approximately 5,000 feet, about 1,500 meters. On board the aircraft were 181 passengers, in addition to 6 cabin crew members and 2 pilots. 5 months later, on March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 disappeared from radar after 6 minutes in the air. According to flight radar data, the device was ascending and descending erratically. It crashes at 8:44 near Bishoftu, Ethiopia. It carried 149 passengers and 8 crew members. The impact zone was so strong that just like the first accident, no bodies could be recovered or identified. After the investigation, it becomes clear that these 2 accidents had the same pattern. Everything pointed to the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, by its English acronym. What this system does is that when the aircraft could go into a stall due to low speed, it took control of the pitch using the depth rudder, pushing the nose down in case the pilot didn't do it. But the incredible thing is that Boeing did not inform that this new system existed in their planes, neither to the pilots nor to the airlines. The big problem was that this Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System took the measurement from only one of the gauges, or angle of attack sensors, or angle of attack for its acronym in English, which are located on each side of the plane's nose. If these angle of attack gauges failed and believed there was more angle of attack than the real one, the system would act and lower the plane's nose uncontrollably, and the pilots didn't know what was happening. The Boeing 737 was the most successful commercial airplane for being the best-selling of all time. More than 10,000 units had already been built, and it was used by many companies all over the world. And if you want to know more about the history of this aircraft, we have a video on the channel from Aeropedia that I leave up to the right for you to watch later. In 2011, the competing company Airbus launched the A320neo. This posed a threat to the American manufacturer Boeing, as Airbus's was much more efficient and therefore more attractive to airlines. So much so that American Airlines, the main American company, signs a purchase contract for the A320neo after decades of only buying from Boeing. So they quickly started working on a new device, which they launched as 737 just a few days after this. This shows us how from its birth, the MAX is marked by competitive pressure. A few days after the second MAX accident, another investigation was taking place in Washington, D.C. They received information from complaints by FAA employees that is, the Federal Aviation Administration and Boeing, about how the certification of this aircraft was carried out, which would allow it to fly safely. And also how they had been pressuring him to design the new 737 quickly and as economically as possible. To give an example, an engineer named Rick Lopk, who helped design the MAX cabin. In a Times interview, he discussed the obsession with avoiding changes during development.
Program was a pressure cooker, much more intense than ever before. The company was trying to minimize costs, minimize the minimum to simplify the differences, and to do it quickly. They appeared to crave speed. There were many decisions that were a bit arbitrary and did not involve as much in what engineering considers a healthy debate. The challenge to Boeing's designers was that any designs we create would not drive any new training that required a simulator.
It seems they were so determined to avoid the expense of new training, which would generate costs to an airline company. They made a rather bold promise to the airlines. They had committed that for any plane they would deliver, that had a new different level of Boeing training, they would pay the company $1 million for each plane delivered. It was key for Boeing that the pilot training for the MAX was minimal and thus more economical compared to the Airbus option. That means that Boeing had to do a series of things to make this plane fly like the previous one. And that was because the MAX had much larger engines to make it more efficient, but the design of this one was already 50 years old. At that time, the plane with this configuration behaved differently in terms of aerodynamics. That's why they were looking to use a software solution to counteract the pitching movements that they had already used in a tanker plane design, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. This would prevent in maneuvers with a lot of pitch angle. That is, if the nose rises too much, the system would move the stabilizer at the rear of the plane to push the nose down. Washington investigations found that in 2012, in flight simulators, a test pilot had the problem of fighting against the decisions of the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. And that resulted in what he himself described as a catastrophic event if it had happened in real life. The company dismissed this warning. And what's more, it seems they decided to simply not even mention this system, removing it from the training manuals. If they said this was a new feature or an added system, the Federal Aviation Administration would inquire much more about this. Also, according to the investigation, it was known that apart from the plane, the manufacturer's relations with its regulators were also a problem. Is it because many FAA employees were also from Boeing? A few days after the first accident, to East Coast, Boeing reported its Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, and the manufacturer recommended to the airlines. Now yes, train their pilots. In case the angle of attack sensor failed, they would initiate an emergency procedure, which incredibly they tried to use. And we know this from the black box in the second Ethiopian Airlines accident, and it clearly didn't work. Only on March 13th, 2019, 3 days after the second accident, they acknowledged that there were problems with the new system and ordered all planes to be grounded. 737 MAX. There were 370 units in service and over 4,500 on order. After more than a year of work, in June of 2020, Boeing was able to finalize the recertification flight program for the Boeing 737 MAX. Days of flight and all kinds of tests carried out by the crew of pilots and engineers from Boeing and the Federal Aviation Administration. Within the framework of a meticulously detailed new programming, the focus of these flights was centered on the operation of the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. Despite the fact that European Union Aviation Safety Agency or the European Union Aviation Safety Agency wanted the MAX to have 3 angle of attack sensors or angle of attack meters like the Airbus, it finally agreed to recertify it with only 2. Boeing performed a software update for the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System and provided additional training to pilots with the aim of preventing future accidents. Aviation regulators around the world conducted their own reviews and approved the return of service of the 458 miles AX in November 2020. However, the Lion Air and Ethiopian Airlines crashes resulted in a significant loss of confidence in Boeing and in the 737 MAX in particular. The company faced a series of lawsuits and financial compensations, and the changes made to the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System and pilot training have been criticized by some experts and relatives of the victims. Until a new installment of Black Box from Aviation World.